Okay, welcome everyone out there. Just letting everyone know this special live event is being recorded. Okay, and thank you to even some of the other graduate students who are joining us today too, and the undergrads especially. Hopefully you're in a very comfortable place right now, maybe outdoors, or you have a plant nearby. Myself, oh geez, you can't really see it very well. I have to put it in front of my face, my leaf, otherwise it disappears. It's the disappearing leaf. It's actually maple, and so I you know, in my backyard I have a lot of maple trees, and that's a plant that I really have a connection with. I see how they change over the seasons, over the year, and I know that they're a great habitat for a lot of the other animals that live, the urban wildlife in the city of Guelph. And I can see how the leaves change and how the tree changes over the course of the seasons. And it's a plant that I have a deep connection with. So, and of course I love maple syrup too, right? So anyways, I have that on hand because I can't be outside today, although it is a beautiful day, and I would be outside if I could be. But I'm here with Brad. And so Bradley Howie, Brad is just finishing up his master's degree here at the University of Guelph, and he's in School of Environmental Science. He works in the lab of Dr. Jesse Popp, and the lab is also referred to as the WISE Lab. Such a great name, the WISE Lab. It's Wildlife, Indigenous Science, and Ecology Lab here in environmental science. Yeah, he's also an Anishinaabe environmental educator, and we're going to hear a lot about his work and his interests, particularly from a indigenous botanical sense. So I will not say any more. I know Bradley, we've been talking earlier today, and he's really keen and eager to get going on this. So I won't delay any further. Brad, it's all you.
All right, right on. I'm going to spotlight myself here and share my screen. It's this one. Okay, so, oh, that's interesting. Here we are. So you should be able to see just the screen, right? Yeah, everyone? Okay, right on. I can't see myself here, so hopefully I don't make any silly faces, although I'll be talking anyways, so it's okay. All right, so I'm just going to start this here. So yes, thanks for introducing me there. I'll introduce myself as well. But so the title of my presentation that I'm going to be given today is Mishkiki, the strength of Mother Earth and our relationship with plants. And like Chris said, my name is Brad. And so yeah, let's get started. So first thing I'd like to start with is a land acknowledgement. So typically I see the land acknowledgements are like the land acknowledgement for the University of Guelph specifically, but I'd like to do a little bit of a different land acknowledgement. I'd like each and every one of you to acknowledge what the land means to you. This could be where you're living in Guelph, could be where you like to hike, it could be where you like to go to the forest, could be Ontario, could be the Great Lakes region. Just take 30 or so seconds maybe just to acknowledge what the land means to you. Okay, and I also want to say, so I'll give the presentation, and then we'll open up a discussion a little bit later on. So so hold your questions till later on, but feel free to shoot them in the chat, and Chris will take a look-sees at them. Okay, so Ani Kanawea, Brad Indigenous, Beamsel and Nonjaba, Makwa and Dodem, Nitbising and Benedagaz. So hello, everyone. My name is Brad for the third time. I'm from Beamsville, Ontario. I'm from the Bear Clan and Nipissing First Nation. So I'm doing my Master's of Environmental Science with Dr. Jesse Popp in the School of Environmental Science, as well as Dr. Andrew D. Young in the School of Environmental Science. And mostly what my research has been conducted on is basically weaving in Anishinaabe teachings into the University of Guelph Arboretum and developing educational materials. So I want to say I'm obviously not an elder, and I'm not a knowledge holder either. You know, I'm just a student on my journey of learning the Anishinaabe culture. So, you know, my family was affected by the 60 scoop. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically after residential schools, the next kind of thing that the government did was they took Indigenous children away from their families and placed them into families of like primarily like Dutch and English ancestry. And so because of that, I didn't really grow up in the Anishinaabe culture. I grew up in a much more, you know, Western or European, I suppose, culture. And it's really been through this past year, doing research as well as in my own personal time, that I've really begun to learn about my Anishinaabe heritage. And so I take the approach that I'm just a student on this journey, but that's kind of cool because so are all you. We're all students on this journey today, learning about the Anishinaabe culture, language, science, and knowledge. And one other thing I'd like to say is, you know, the teachings that I'm going to share today, they're not my teachings. You know, these are teachings that have been passed on from generation to generation since time immemorial. So I keep saying the word Anishinaabe, and you may be wondering why I'm focusing on Anishinaabe today. Well, it's because, I mean, I'm personally Anishinaabe. Dr. Jesse Popp is Anishinaabe, and all of the elders and knowledge holders we worked with on this project are also Anishinaabe. And so the Anishinaabe peoples are the traditional peoples of the Great Lakes region. So this includes, let me pull this laser pointer up here. This includes, you know, the Algonquin, the Nipissing, the Mississaugas, the Potawatomi, the Odawa, the Ojibwe, the Oji Cree, and the Saltex. And so it's really the indigenous peoples of the Great Lakes regions. So in terms of some goals for today, I'd really like to have an introduction to Anishinaabe culture and language, as well as botanical knowledge. And I'd really like to tell a story of seeing the strength of the earth and our responsibility and our reciprocal ongoing gift exchange with the earth. And then also, you know, I was talking with my cousin the other day, and I'm finishing my master's in December, and we were talking, and I've been in school for 20 years straight since I've been like 4, which is pretty crazy to think about. And you know, a lot of that I've been sometimes in class just bored out of my mind. So really, another goal is not to bore you. So we're going to make sure it's going to be a fun time. So what we're going to do today, and kind of what we're not going to do today, well, I'm not going to talk specifically about, you know, like nutrient uptake mechanisms or mechanisms of growth or reproduction. You know, just as a FYI, I was trained as a chemist before coming to the University of Guelph. And in my master's, I've been focusing on Anishinaabe science. And before anybody leaves the lecture and goes, okay, well, this isn't botanical knowledge. Today, we are going to look at some botanical knowledge, but really our relationship with plants and the strength of Mother Earth. So we're going to be talking about, you know, what plants give to us and what we can give back in this reciprocal relationship, you know, to form this cute little heart here. And so the title of my presentation is Mishkiki, right? Which in Anishinaabe, which is the Anishinaabe language, Mishkiki translates to medicine in English. But what it really actually means is strength of the earth. And so this is how the Anishinaabe see medicine. It's literally the strength of the earth itself, our mother, Shakakmakwi, or Mother Earth. And, you know, when you think about it, all of creation is bound together by coming from and living on one mother. Whether it's the trees or the insects or the birds or the fish or the humans, we all come from one single source, which is, of course, the earth. And so we're all bound together. And even in the way that the language is written down, there's so much cultural insight into the way that the words are broken down. You know, it's not just medicine, it's the strength of the earth. And so it's really important that we speak the language. You know, many elders and Anishinaabe people in general, they've kind of expressed this concern that if the language dies, then the culture dies. And a special feature of the Anishinaabe language, which is Anishinaabe, and indeed all indigenous languages, is the connection of language to place. You know, the language really goes deeper than grammar. It's the center of the indigenous ways of knowing and connection with the environment. And it's the principal medium by which the culture is transmitted. You know, and a huge part of this is storytelling, right? And storytelling transmits knowledge and beliefs and ideas, and it's passed on from generation to generation. And so this is a picture of two elders who come to the University of Guelph quite often, Dan and Mary Lou Smoke. They're very cute. They've been married for a very long time. And Mary Lou is Anishinaabe and Dan is Haudenosaunee, which if you have questions later on about kind of the difference between those two, I can try to speak to it. But they share a lot of stories, and they often talk, you know, they share some of these stories like in the language too. Another thing is that, so the great spirit or the creator, Gitche Manado, he sent his son, Nanabojo, before humans inhabited the earth to walk the earth and to name every single being. So it's said that before humans arrived, there were all of the non-human beings on earth, whether they were animate or they were inanimate. You know, everything has a spirit, even like Nibi, which is water, or Shkode, which is fire. You know, everything has a spirit, like trees, insects, mushrooms, all that kind of good stuff. And when Nanabojo walked the earth and he named every single being, he named them in a way that spoke to their spirit. And so when we speak these names, we honor the being's role in creation. You know, one thing I really love is, so I really love insects, and the word for insects is Menadoshans, right? Which in English translates to insects. But what it really translates to is little spirit, which is really quite cute. So, you know, when you think about it, insects are not just something, you know, you squash or you swat away, right? They're something, they have little spirits, you know. And this just kind of shows you it's a culture of respect and reciprocity. And I also want to say I'm just learning the language. So, you know, for anybody listening who might speak Anishinaabe and they're like, wow, this guy's pronunciation is not good. I'm trying. And whenever I can speak the language, I'm going to. Okay, so now into some Anishinaabe botanical knowledge. So something I'm constantly amazed by is that whenever I walk the land with elders and knowledge holders, their understanding of the flora and fauna, and specifically the flora of the land, is just so vast and amazing. You know, they can identify these plants and not only identify them, but speak to their role in creation and speak to, you know, are they a medicine? Are they a food? Like what's their purpose in creation, right? And so our ancestors, they really had a vast knowledge of all the plants that grew in the area. And I don't know, it's just amazing. If you ever get the chance to walk with an elder and an Anishinaabe knowledge holder, or any indigenous, I guess, elder or knowledge holder, I would highly recommend it because it's really just an awesome process. So let's talk about plant medicines, right? So, you know, being trained as a chemist, I saw a lot in undergrad that a lot of medicines are derived from plants, whether or not they still come from plants or they just take the chemical structure and kind of expand on it. A lot of them are derived from plants, and these are physical medicines that act on your actual physical body. So one being aloe vera, which I love. You know, aloe is not a native plant to this region, but it really shows the strength of Mother Earth. I mean, it's such a powerful like medicine for your skin. You know, whenever I get sunburns, I just put some aloe vera on. And it's also a powerful medicine in terms of, you know, you can mix it in water and it's like, has tons of vitamins in it. It tastes horrible, but it's good for you. And even this last Sunday, I went for a walk in the forest and I got some kind of insect bite on my forehead. And I was going out to dinner, and I was really worried. And I was like, oh boy, I really don't want to go out to dinner like this. And I used some aloe vera, and it went right away, and it was pretty amazing. And so, this is the Western idea of medicines. There's some kind of pharmacological activity on you physiologically. But what is kind of a medicine to the Anishinaabe? So this is the medicine wheel here. And the medicine wheel it's like a cultural symbol, but it also acts as a very powerful pedagogy tool. And so the medicine wheel has 4 quadrants to it, and the number 4 is quite sacred. And so within these 4 quadrants, it contains many important teachings. It's the 4 directions, it's your 4 parts of your life, it's the 4 sacred medicines. But one teaching that I really enjoy is that human beings, we're more than just our intellectual self. We have a mind, we have a body, we have emotions, and we have a spirit. And so because of this, medicines in the Anishinaabe sense, they can be something that go beyond physiologically, and they can be something that affect your spirit or affect your mind or your emotions. And it's literally, they come from Mother Earth, right? It's the strength of Mother Earth. And so I'd like to talk about the 4 sacred medicines to the Anishinaabe people. And these medicines they're very aromatic. I have them here, and they smell quite nice. And the aromaticity of it allows kind of the spirits to connect to our physical plane. And when we burn these medicines, it takes our thoughts and prayers up to the Creator. And each medicine occupies a different part of the medicine wheel. So the first medicine is sema, or it's tobacco, right? And this isn't like the smoking kind of tobacco or party kind of tobacco. This is a sacred medicine, and in fact, it was said that the first medicine or even the first plant that was given to the Anishinaabe people was that of tobacco. And tobacco is used really quite drastically differently in the Anishinaabe culture than it is in the Western culture. What I see it mostly used is as an ongoing gift exchange, whether that be for knowledge or whether that would be for medicine. So, when you go and see an elder and they share knowledge with you, you give them a tobacco tie in your left hand because it's closer to your heart, and they accept that gift with their left hand as well. And when you go to a forest and you collect medicines, you give some tobacco. When you go take a tree, you give some tobacco and you ask the tree if it is okay to take its life, because you recognize that the tree is not just simply a tree, it's just a non-human being. And when you take the tree, it's with the understanding that tree is giving its life to sustain yours. So tobacco is really used as this ongoing gift exchange. And the eastern quadrant of the medicine wheel is the earliest part. It's not like north centered, it's east centered because that's where the sun rises from. So the second medicine that lies in the southern quadrant is sweetgrass. And so sweetgrass has many, many teachings associated with it. One is that it's the sacred hair of Mother Earth. And it's often braided into these braided sweetgrass. And if you smell it, it has like a really wonderful aroma. And I'll speak a little more about sweetgrass later. The next sacred medicine is sage. So sage lies in the western quadrant. And sage is used, it's used for purification, to cleanse and to bless people before ceremonies and to bless objects. And really, when you smudge with sweetgrass, sage, use typically an abalone shell or I think this is a quahog shell or something like that. And when you smudge, you're basically putting good thoughts into the air and you're purifying yourself. And the last of the sacred medicines is that of cedar. And cedar is also another purification medicine. And it's also used in sweat lodge ceremonies and some other ceremonies. And cedar is not only a good medicine for your spirit, but it's also a fantastic medicine for your physical body in that cedar contains a whole whack load of vitamin C. And if you think my Anishinaabe is bad, wait till you hear my Latin. So the Europeans called the cedar tree Arbor Vitae. Sounds bad, but that translates to tree of life because they recognize that, although I don't think back then they perhaps knew what vitamin C was, that it was a very powerful agent to treat like scurvy and stuff like that. And so what we see here is we see medicines that don't just affect your body, but what we also see is our relationship with plants native to this region. You know, these plants, they're not just objects of exploitation. They're not just natural resources, but they're spirits and they're sacred medicines that deserve our respect and our reciprocity. So with that, there's this thing called the Three Sisters, right? And I don't know if some of you have heard this, but every time I hear it or talk about it, it still amazes me. So the first sister is corn, right? And corn grows tall and straight. And the second sister is beans. So I don't know if anybody's ever grown beans here, but when you grow beans, they need something to grow onto. They need support, right? And in this case, the corn acts as that system. Now, not only this, but I don't know if you're learning this in this class or another botany class perhaps, but beans are in the legume family, and they have a symbiotic relationship with nitrogen-fixing bacteria. And because of this, it adds fertilizer into the soil, and that makes the corn grow bigger. And then the third sister is that of squash, right? And so squash grows really close to the ground and is quite prickly, actually. And because of that, it prevents predation from things like deer and stuff. Not only that, because it grows so close to the ground, it prevents water loss and also soil erosion. And all these three sisters, they work together and they make this food medicine, right? Food is medicine for your body, right? It's just maybe a different way of thinking about medicine. And so with all these three sisters holding hands and working together, it's really a perfect system. And you might think, okay, well, it's a perfect system, but like without science, question mark? I mean, what's going on? We're putting fertilizer into the soil by nitrogen fixation. We're promoting pollination. We don't need to use pesticides. It's preventing water loss. It's not a monoculture. It's perfectly nutritious. It's sustainable. And when you think you could, horticulturalists, masters, PhD, postdocs, professors, you could give millions of dollars of research money and take decades and decades. And, I don't know for sure, but I think they'd be hard pressed to create such a perfect system that balances so many things and also creates a really highly nutritious meal. And so when you think about this, there had to be some sort of like indigenous science or ways of knowing before. And so this is what's called, traditional ecological knowledge, which is all kinds of scientific, agricultural, technical, and ecological knowledge, including cultigens, medicines, and the rational use of flora and fauna. And this is really transmitted from generation to generation. And so this traditional ecological knowledge, it is different from traditional Western knowledge. So, in Western science, what's traditionally done is that, you formulate these hypotheses and then you design experiments to accept or reject these hypotheses. And then eventually, through this kind of process, you get to form a growing scientific body of evidence. And in this process, you have to be totally objective. You're almost like some kind of being looking at an ant colony, not touching it, not trying to influence it in any way, but just watching it, right? And the way that this is different in the Anishinaabe science sense is that you're not remaining totally objective, right? In the Anishinaabe science, you recognize that you have your mind, which is of course important in science, but you also have a body, and you also have a spirit, and you also have emotions. And so when Anishinaabe science is done, it's not just done with your intellect. And we see that with the Three Sisters, right? It's called the Three Sisters cropping system, but I'd imagine in horticulture it would be like, I don't know, corns, beans, squash would be like CB, CBS, you know, something like that, or something, some kind of acronym that sounds cool on paper, but is cumbersome to speak out loud, you know, and really what the Anishinaabe science is an empirical based science, right? It's based on that the Anishinaabe people have been living in this area since the last glaciation 10,000 years ago. And I mean, they were humans, so obviously they had a brain and they were smart. And through generation and generation, they learned, you know, what medicines can I eat? What food can I eat? You know, what's the best way to crop? What's the best way to hunt? One thing that I really love is that the plants of the land, they teach us about the land, right? So this is a strawberry, picture of a strawberry I took. And something that's interesting about this is I was told by an elder that you can take a deer when the strawberries are ripened, right? And what this really shows, it's not just like an arbitrary date set by like, you know, some kind of environmental policy, like, you know, July 1st, you can take a deer. But this is directly tied to the environment because they recognize that when the strawberries have ripened, that means it's warm enough. And this has given enough time for the baby deers to grow up and be able to kind of sustain themselves without their mothers. And so the plants, they really have a deep and vast knowledge of the land of where they grow. And the Anishinaabe look at those plants and they learn from those plants. And so hopefully this isn't too creepy, but the plants are teachers, right? And so they're just non-human teachers, okay? But they deserve just as much respect and reciprocity that you probably should be giving your teachers and professors. So with this, there's this idea of braiding knowledge systems, right? And sweetgrass is kind of used as you know, the metaphor for this. So, you know, when you take one blade, well, I'm not going to be able to pull it out, but when you take one blade of sweetgrass, it can easily be broken, right? I mean, that wasn't too hard. But when you have it braided itself, it's much harder to break, right? And so there's this idea that was coined by Elder Albert Marshall of the Mi'kmaq Nation called two-eye seeing, whereby you use an eye of Western knowledge and an eye of Indigenous knowledge to see the whole picture clear. And this is two-eyed seeing. And this is really, I think, important for specifically, I guess, my field of study, which is environmental science, because, you know, in environmental science, there's these problems called wicked problems. They're not simply solved. It's not like in not to say chemistry is simple, because it's not at all. But in chemistry, you know, you have a test tube. You put A, you put B, you might get D, C, E, whatever, F, but you're looking for C, right? There's some kind of chemical reaction. It's not an incredibly complex problem. But in environmental science, they're called often wicked problems. You know, like think of climate change. It has so many different implications. It has political boundaries. It has economic boundaries. It has environmental science. There's a tie of people with the place they live. There's a tie of cultural heritage to certain practices that maybe might not be the most environmentally sustainable. And so in my opinion, you can't just approach these problems totally objectively and with Western science, because the environmental problems are so much more complex than just, you know, pure science, right? And so, I mean, it's my hope and it's kind of my thought that with this, you know, braiding in this Indigenous knowledge system, it really helps you to see the whole picture clearer in a way that benefits all. And it also informs sustainability. So, you know, the Anishinaabe, they see the forest as a place to collect medicines and to collect food. It's a place of ongoing gift exchange between the human beings and the non-human beings. And the Anishinaabe people, they don't think of sustainability in terms of your children or your grandchildren. They always think of sustainability in terms of the next 7 generations. And, you know, it's with this kind of thought of sustainability deeply rooted in the culture that I think can really inform environmental policy and all that jazz. And so, kind of to end off here with our role to play, our role is really, it's to protect our mother, right? We all come from the same mother, and our role is to walk hand in hand. You know, it's almost like we have kind of like a cultural amnesia. And I'm not just talking about like indigenous people, but it doesn't matter where you come from, whether you come from England or Africa or Asia or South America or anywhere. All of our ancestors had a really deep relationship with the land because we needed to. The land sustained us. But somehow through, I guess, the past couple hundred years, we've kind of lost our relationship and our respect, for Mother Earth. And, I think we just need to kind of rekindle that. And that's why I kind of asked people to maybe just go outside and look for specific plants or something that they found cool, just to be like, wow, this is just growing here. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Or like, when you eat a piece of fruit, like I was eating this apple the other day and I'm like, my God, this is a good apple. And it's like, it just grows. I mean, obviously people are fertilizing and farming it and people have developed that apple, but like at the end of the day, you put a seed in the ground and the sun shines on it, and sometime later you get this incredible piece of fruit. And so I'd really like to just leave off with this Anishinaabe story that tells of 7 prophets, and the prophets are referred to as fires. So the 7th fire is a prophecy that tells of a new people who will emerge when the correct choice between 2 roads is taken. If the Anishinaabe people and the settlers, they come together and they stand together, then the 8th and the final fire will be lit, rebirthing not only in the Anishinaabe nation, but all nations in a warm light of peace, love, brotherhood, and sisterhood. And this number 7 is really important. There's 7 grandfather teachings, and we think of 7 generations ahead. And something that's really interesting too, it's been 7 generations since the Indian Act came into place in Canada. And essentially what the Indian Act was an act to pretty much eradicate, Native people in Canada, or at least culturally assimilate them. And so, there's all these 7s, and I just think, this is the 8th generation. And I think this is, the 8th fire. That this is the generation where the indigenous and the non-indigenous allies, the indigenous allies, we have a role to play in coming together and protecting Mother Earth. And so with that, let's go back to our goal slide. So, did we have an introduction to Anishinaabe culture and knowledge, as well as botanical knowledge? We sure did. Did we tell a story of seeing the strength of Mother Earth, of Mishkiki, and our relationship with plants? I hope so. And last and not least, your TAs are here, and so is Chris. Did I bore you guys? No? Okay, right on. So everything, all the goals are checked off. So it's at this point I'd like to open up the dance floor for some questions, comments, whatever. Hey, whatever you want to talk about, I'm free. So yeah. That's really it.
Thank you very much, Brad. I'm going to clap, and maybe, I know we're in the same room, so you can hear it. Maybe those of you in the audience, you could open up your mics and clap. Or you could use the virtual applause too, I suppose. Thank you very much, Brad. That was wonderful. That was great. We have time for some questions with Brad. I'll ask, there is the chat available, although we would much prefer if you could open up your microphones and probably turn on your cameras too, if you'd like to ask Brad a question, and I'll help to wrangle those questions for him. I guess I can start off with, it was, there's a lot of things I am fascinated by, and beforehand I was asking Brad a